Hello, everyone. Welcome. Gabs in here. What's in the glass? As you can see, I'm surrounded by beautiful people, beautiful guests. Nigel from Other Kellys and Tasha from Other Kellys, and also from Turning the Tide, a project that I'm looking after in these days. Welcome, everyone. Please, you are more invited to comment and to tell us what you think about the chat. And before introduce you our guest today, I'm just gonna tell you a bit what's happening in here. So as I said, my name is Gabs, and I'm a big guy from a couple of years now, probably around 12 or 13, and really passionate about beer, everything about beer, talking about it, doing photos about it, writing about it, drinking a lot as much as I can, but always in the right way. And I started to work in the craft beer industry thanks for the man just behind me here, Nigel. And it was a beautiful experience, and it let me start to love the element, the liquid, even more than before. And since then, I did a couple of more experiences in different places, different side, on trade, off trade, breweries, where I'm working right now for London Fields. And why I found myself in this very unusual condition as the furler is, I decided it was the right time to try something on my own. And that was the time where What's in the Glass started. And What's in the Glass is basically a genuine journey from a wannabe contemporary beer communicator. And we are doing different type of online activities, hopefully very soon offline activities as well. And one of them is the Digital Beer Stream, this digital platform where we are discussing with guests from the world of beer in London, in the UK, and rest of the world, when we are lucky to have them. And another beautiful project that we wanted to go for is Turning the Tide, which is a show about pubs and the story of the people and the personalities around the hospitality, the beer industry, and so pubs in their worst time ever of struggle. And together with a couple of creatives and filmmakers and the beautiful Tasha here tonight, we creating a sort of journey which we are going to tell you in a bit. But I would love to say welcome to Nigel and to Tasha. Welcome, guys.
Cheers, Gabs.
And I would love to explain as well that today what we're doing is basically discussing and trying to find, to have an idea about what happened in the industry, especially from the Mother Kelly side in these last 12 months, and maybe a bit less, 11 or 10, and try to understand, how the business has been impacted. And you also have someone in here which made a lot of noise and creating a lot of occasions for the industry to, gather and try to understand and try to question important questions out there. So normally there is a very easy question, which is what I'm starting with. And would you mind to tell me a bit more about yourself, guys? And starting with Nigel, probably.
Yeah, I would love to, Gabs. I'm Nigel. I'm the owner and founder of Mother Kelly's. And I've been working in hospitality 20 years this year. I started in cocktails and when I was at university, and kind of fell in love with the industry back then. And I've just not fallen out of it since. And I've been a business owner in London for the last 12 years. I've had some pubs before I started Mother Kelly's, and then we've had Mother Kelly's now for, I think it's our 6th year, possibly 7th this year, possibly. Wow. I'm not too sure. So. It feels like there's not a world before Mother Kelly's. But I love hospitality. I love everything about it, and I feel very grateful that I work in hospitality, and I'm very grateful that I work with the people I work with and the people that I've met through my journey in hospitality over the years. And that's about it, really. I just feel very grateful to do what I do.
That's brilliant. And you know, Nigel, as probably met a few more people in here watching us and watching later on as well, I'm sure then many of them started to drink good beer in one of your venues, which is
amazing. Which makes me, you know, that makes me very proud of the work that I've done and the proud of the work that everyone has done to enable that to happen.
That's brilliant to hear. And hello, Tasha.
Hi, I'm Natasha. Thanks for having me tune in as well. I am also a beer personality, a woman in beer. I've worked in beer for about a decade now. Also co-founder of Crafty Beer Girls, and I've been with Mother Kelly's managing the social media and marketing since I think it's like a year now, a bit less actually. But yeah, through the the peak times of this pandemic, and as you mentioned, Gabs, I've also teamed up with you to help out on turning the tide and basically, yeah, just kind of really getting down to seeing how hospitality can get through this really crazy time and critical time in history.
And I would love to say then probably with different, not roles, but different priorities or different reasons we are so much involved within the hospitality and the beer world, you know, and probably some people don't realize how much I feel like I'm with my family right now, you know, even if maybe I didn't see you in a few months and everything, but it's just the love of you know the places and the venues and the pubs and all the memories attached to it and the liquid itself. There is so much around it, and we are scared. We will tell you why we are scared, and I probably would love to start with a question to Nigel as well, because I think is it's interesting to hear. With Turning the Tide, we basically went around a bit. I tried to reach you out as well because I wanted to talk with you about how your business was going. So with Turning the Tide, we managed to speak with few, pub owners and managers, venues that I'm sure you're super familiar with, and we received a good breakdown. But after all of this, I really wanted to know from you how your business has been impacted by these sorry guys for the word, unprecedented times, but this is it, really is. If you can give us a bit of a breakdown for it.
Well, I think it's been impacted in a way. Well, the major way it's been impacted, Gabs, is that there is no business fundamentally. We've gone from, so for 2020, I sat down in December 2019 to do our budgets for 2020. And as a business, I think I budgeted about maybe 4.2 million to turnover for the whole of 2020. And I think we've probably come before the first lockdown, we probably turned over about £800,000 of that. And from March to the end of the year, I think we might have turned over maybe £320,000, and that's it. So that's how it's really affected us. Is that there is no business effectively right now, and it is just like, how do we get through it to get that business back and to build that business back up? So along with that business all going, we've had to deal with numerous other things along the way, from dealing with all our suppliers, getting the grants, dealing with the staff, how do we manage that, furlough. And I think fundamentally, the last 9 months has just really been about making probably decisions that I either didn't want to make or really never thought I'd have to make.
Definitely, I'm sure.
As I'm sitting here on a Friday night in January, we've got one venue open out of 7 venues, which is our bottle shop in N16. And I never thought we'd ever be in a position where that would happen, where we would have effectively none of the business open. So yeah, it's made us, we've had to take some really difficult decisions. And I think that's when I look back over the last 9 months in years to come, it will be, and I suppose the next 4 or 5 months, it will be like, do you know what, we've had to make some hard decisions to get through it, really. And I kind of think that's what will, yeah, that'd be my main memory of the last 9 months, is just sitting down and going, right, what's the goal in all of this? What do we actually want to achieve in all of this?
Yeah.
You know, the goal is getting through it. And how do we get through it? And in what state do we get through it? But all I know is that if we don't get through it, all of those decisions just will be a waste of time, energy, and effort. So, you know, it's just like, I remember sitting down and going, right, we need to get through this. And that's the goal, is getting through it as a business. So it will enable us to bring people back to work, create revenue again, and just basically start again and start rebuilding the business again. But yeah, I think it's been an interesting 9 months, really. And when I think about it as well, I think there's one issue in the business. You know, I said before, I've been doing this 20 years, and I basically do whatever I want to do. And I don't really care much about anyone else's opinion. And I'm just going to do what I feel good and right for me, which has been fine up to this point, because, you know, I just plod along. We as a business just move forward in the direction that I set, which is okay. But up until this point, where actually that's no longer good enough, because I think, you know, we as a whole industry now need to move forward. And, you know, me as a business owner, and we need to be talking to other business owners within the industry, getting their opinion, their thoughts, and sharing our thoughts with them, and then moving together collectively has been probably one of the big changes over the last 9 months, because, you know, we need to be talking to other people outside of the industry about what is going on in the industry and has been going on over the last 9 months. But yeah, that's one of the positive things. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there a second.
No, right. Because I was going to actually, that's bring something that I wanted to mention, which ties in with what you mentioned, Nigel. I think I know this pandemic has stripped everyone, not just, you know, people from the industry, of their freedom. And I think a lot of the business decisions, all businesses, not just ours, I think all hospitality businesses and also businesses outside of hospitality, you know, the decision making is not based on the luxury of having that choice. It's based on survival. And so, yeah, it's going to be tough in terms of HR, in terms of staff, maybe, you know, not being part of a company anymore, or, you know, not getting as many hours anymore. Also just, you know, the impact on trade. I know we've had to be quite, you know, looking at who we stock and how much money we're spending. There's this, you know, element of caution, and you know, it takes a little bit out of you in terms of what a business used to be, but we can get back to there.
We will do,
you know,
raise some really good points, you know, and I think it is, you know, it is looking at a business in a completely different way that I've spent the last 12 years of owning a business in London. You know, it's always been about, right, us growing, create income, employing people, look for new venues, expansion, doing interesting stuff. And now it's like, actually, the interesting stuff is getting through tomorrow. You know, really fundamentally, getting through tomorrow, we'll get through next week, we get through next week, we get through next month, and then we'll move forward. And that's how we're going to do it, bit by bit. But yeah, and I think that's a really good point, you know, about how draining it has actually been to kind of continually chop and change, and just especially when we were open last summer, with all the changes in regulation, was, you know, that was a real challenge to, not just for me to put in place what we needed to put in place in terms of regulations, but also the staff we had working, of not knowing what those regulations would be when they come to work. And that is that's very challenging.
Let me also say, Nigel, then you made some important decisions that probably at the beginning weren't really understood by everyone within the company. The industry. Very, very simple, you know, decisions like, I'm not going to open until I feel like. It feels very, very simple, but it's not that, you know, it's not that easy to do as a
and like, I feel that like, you know, we could have opened in between end of November and Christmas. And I still think us not choosing not to open was still one of the hardest decisions, because it goes against everything in my body and in my being to not open. But, you know, every time we open the doors of somewhere, or reopen the doors, I should say, it costs us probably 10 grand. So we're like, do you know what? I can see the writing was on the wall. There's no point opening. We're better off saving that money. So when we can open, we will open again. And hopefully once we're open again, there'll be no more closing, no more lockdown. So we know we'll just be open. And you know, that was a really difficult decision. You know, it's just like actually making those decisions, being like, do you know what, we're just gonna step out of the ring for this one. and just carry on as we are and kind of take a back seat in it. And that's really challenging. That was a really tough decision.
And
well done.
I don't think, sorry, you go ahead.
Please.
No, I was just going to say, like, those sort of like having to pivot and reassess, and it's different for all businesses, and what we've done is obviously different to, say, our neighbour business. But I think the undercurrent is that beer industry venues, hospitality venues, we're all struggling, and I think that needs documenting. And we've been trying to share our experiences in terms of open letters, but also I think what you're doing, Gabs, with the Turning the Tide, it's a way of documenting that narrative and making sure people within the industry and in a broader circles do know what's going on, and that they can learn from that we can learn from that God forbid this happens in the future, we can be better prepared and not struggle as much as I think we have. And I'm sure everyone is feeling this past year has been a struggle.
I totally agree with that.
I was at home, I was feeling like after 48 different live streams with 48 beautiful people, some friends of us, some of the very crucial personalities out there for the industry. I felt like it was going to be something special, trying to catch the moment and catch the all these experiences, all of these the difficulties that all of these pubs had, and really document how hard has been this hardest hit punch in the face for this industry as a whole, and like going around and trying to understand, organize yourself, see with who you can actually share a couple of words, try to understand, and if people want to speak, and I'm telling you, people wanted to speak a lot. They really wanted to tell where they're going through and how tough has been. So this has been very remarkable experience. We did 25 different interviews with 25 different experts and pub owners. So like having 5 episodes, which is going to include all of them, made it in a proper way, able to reach audiences where maybe craft beer hasn't reached yet, hopefully, and make it like the perfect product for make sure that now that everyone here to the industry. But in the same time, you also made, as I said before, a lot of noise out there, and just a simple question, which is what kind of concrete actions you really have done and since you have realized that you had to contain this crisis. I'm really curious to hear.
I just want to add something to what you just said there, Gabs, as well. Over the last 9 months, it's been a fucking shit show. It's been really difficult. It's been really challenging, and we can't forget that. And it's still going to be challenging for a lot of people going forward. But on the flip side of that, we need to look at what you've done in terms of this interviewing people, talking to people about this period of time. That's a really good thing. And we need to remember that, and positive things will come out of this. And this is one of them. The fact that we're all sitting here chatting about this is a great thing that we wouldn't have done otherwise. And the fact that you were going around talking to these people about their experience and documenting a period in time in London of hospitality is a great thing, and we can't lose track of the positives for the overwhelming amount of negatives. So I think that's really important.
Thank you.
But I think, like I said before, I think I've only really made one concrete goal through all of this, and that is getting through it. That's it, and every other decision around that has just been another decision around that. That's the goal, right? We're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. We're going to open the doors again. We're going to hire people again. We're going to get people back to work again. We're going to buy beer off our favorite suppliers again. We're going to get our Andrew, who's been cleaning the bars for years, back to work. We've got a guy who does the cleaning at Simon the Tanner, our pub down in Borough. He has been with our business 10 years now. It's got to be 10 years. We want to get him back to work because, he's a part of the business and we want to get him back to work. And Claire, our florist, who does the flowers at the Queen's Head and Simon the Tanner. I've known Claire since before I had any business at all. when I was working for Young's and I was running a pub up in Primrose Hill. She was a florist there, and that's how I found her. So she has been with the business since day one. And, you know, I owe it to these people to make that decision to get through it so that we can bring them back to work and I can carry on spending money and giving money to Claire for her flowers, that we can do that. And I think that's really important. So I think that's the only real thing, like concrete thing I've put in place is, right, we're going to get through this. There's going to be hard decisions, and there's going to be decisions that I don't want to make. There might be decisions that I'll look back in years' time that I will regret. But everything we're doing is to get through that. Is to get through this so we can open up those doors again, and, you know, just sell people nice beer. That's all I want to do.
Yeah, that's the exactly.
You know, fundamentally, and that's it.
So I'm just going to chime in on some things related to that. Yeah, like Nigel said, he's like, in terms of like from day one that I've been with Mother Kelly's, there's obviously been the sense of whatever's happening is with the long term in mind. You know, decisions are difficult. Business decisions being made are difficult. What's happening now is definitely temporary. And we all have to remember, no matter how hard it is, this pandemic is going to come to an end at one day, and we just have to do our best to work hard until that point in time, and just stay driven. And that is really hard. And it, you know, you do sometimes feel like a lack of motivation, but, you know, you can break it up and you can try and make positive actions out of this mess. So I think one of the most positive things we've done, which was in response to a negative scenario, which was the government not really giving clear guidance. You couldn't really call it guidance. The support was sort of mishmash or lacking. And, you know, to be honest, like some of the grants were only available days before Christmas, like to apply for them through the local authorities. It's been a real struggle trying to, you know, we've got seven venues across London. You know, you have to apply to the individual local authorities, going to the separate, you know, pages for the different councils, and one will have one available, one will have no information. It's been a minefield. But what we've done is we've reached out by writing open letters and reaching out to our local MPs. And I think we've both been pleasantly surprised with, you know, the reaction and responses from our local MPs. The one we've spoken to 3 in person, well, via Zoom, and we've got some responses from a couple others. And yeah, we've even, like, they've really helped us. They've managed to get a letter from you, Nige, to Annalise Dobbs when around the time the furlough situation was going to be reviewed. And so, you know, I think that's been a really big positive for, I think, for what we've been doing.
I agree with you 100%, Tasha. You know, when I look back over all of my years of running businesses in London, the fact that I've never actually spoken to any MPs about what we do and the industry, I feel a bit fucking stupid, really. Like, I probably should have done that a lot more and been a lot more proactive. But yeah, I'm really pleased with, well, actually, there's 2 sides to the coin. You know, with the MPs we've been dealing with, I'm really pleased with the conversations that we've had, and I think they've been really good. And Neil Cole down at Borough has been really helpful, dealing with the landlord for Simon the Tanner. Florence for Lambeth has been speaking to Archco on our behalf, and I think we're going to see some movement with that probably next week, fingers crossed. And we had a really nice chat with Lynn from Newham, who was really positive again, and also give us some really good advice. So, you know, that's the positive side of it. But then we have that negative side of it, as you said, Tasha, trying to get the grants and dealing with the government and the bureaucracy that come with that has just been, quite frankly, for lack of a better word, a joke. You know, I don't understand. I'd really like to sit down with Boris Johnson and go, what the fuck are you doing? How do you expect businesses to get through this, really? Because, you know, that money that we're supposed to have access to, trying to get that money has been, quite frankly, ridiculously difficult. At unprecedented times where that money is more important, that it should be not in local councils' bank accounts, but in businesses' bank accounts. And the fact that how problematic that has been is very, very frustrating. And it really outweighs all the positives that we've had dealing with the local MPs.
You know, Nigel, there are businesses in the area where some of your business are placed, and chatting with the GM and the owners and hearing them they didn't have any sort of rent reductions from landlords. Support from the breweries, hopefully. I'm sure everyone like them, everyone in London had it, and this was brilliant to hear. Breweries has been like spot on, but is the lack of support, especially from, as you said, the government or some sector of it, and you know, again, the landlords, which
I think
it's killing me inside if I think about it. You know,
if is our landlord for one of our venues today. I had an email off him this morning, asking me why I haven't paid the rent, and I'm like, mate, if you fucking stepped outside your house, do you know what's going on? We have no business, and you just expect me just to carry on paying the rent, and they're not even open to a conversation about it. And I look at that and all of the good work that businesses are going to be put in to get through this, and the staff are going to put in, and owners are going to put in all the effort, the tears, the sweat, the sleepless nights, the anxiety, all of that. They're going to put all of that work in, and it's going to be undone because one landlord wants to make sure he gets their money or they get their money. And the fact that the government hasn't put something in place, that, all right, okay, they have put something in place. They put a non-mandatory code of conduct in place.
Oh, right, okay.
Landlords don't even know that exists, and let alone read it. And the fact that the government actually hasn't mandated something to help manage the landlord and tenant relationship, quite frankly, for lack of a better word, boggles my mind. So all of that effort that me as a business owner and the staff, Tasha, put in, and all of the money we get from the government could just be a waste because one of the landlords goes, no, actually, you need to pay me all of the money. I don't care that you're closed. It's not my problem. So it's really frustrating. And I agree with you. I just don't understand how and why the government hasn't done something about it. And my only, my cynical side is saying there's lots of people that work in government that are big commercial landlords and they want the ability to get all of the money that they're owed to them. That would be my cynical side. But maybe the government just doesn't know how to do it. It feels very... It should have been the first thing that they did back in March, because here we are 9 months later, and all we've done is kick it down the road. We're actually not dealing with the problem. I feel very lucky actually that the majority of the landlords that I'm dealing with have been really, really sympathetic and really know that, do you know what, for them to get any form of revenue, they need us to get through it.
100%.
So, touch wood, we'll be okay on that front. But yeah, it's really frustrating. And like you said, it's insane. I bumped into a local coffee shop owner in Bethnal Green here in the week. And, we were having this conversation about the landlord. And they said, yeah, the landlord wants full rent. I'm like, well, it's ridiculous. And they're like, yeah, we're just going to hand the keys back. We'll hand the keys back. We'll go and do something else. Because how can they expect us to pay full rent when we can't even operate at a 40 or 50% capacity? It's madness. It's really madness. And it's one thing that I find, like I said, it boggles my mind why the government hasn't done anything about it. But also on the flip side of that, as we were talking about before, and as you mentioned, Tasha, and probably as what we need to do more of a business, is really focus in on this issue and get in touch with our landlords, get in touch with MPs as an industry. And it's not just about, the Green Kings out here, Marstons. It's about that small independent pub owner. Start shouting about it and being like, the government, what are you going to do about this? It's letters to MPs, Twitter, Instagram, social media, conversations like this, being like, what are you actually going to do about it? Because all of that effort, hard work, could all be for nothing because some landlord, just wants a quarter's rent and is not willing to give any breaks at all. So that's, for me, that's still the real big issue that I kind of think most of the industry is not really talking about. I think a lot of the industry has kind of put their heads in the sand about it. But we really need to start screaming from, the rooftops is to the government, what are you going to do about this? You need to do something about this. We can't just be left to our own devices. You need to put something in place, a mandatory code of conduct at the very least, to help at least the tenant and landlord negotiate the rent for when they've been closed.
And sorry if I'm asking this, but otherwise, what is the risk? Like to see an empty London or something like that?
So I think if you look at most businesses, you have a business that's been closed. The landlord, say you have, hypothetically, you have a bar where the rent's 100 grand a year. The landlord wants his 100 grand a year. You have a choice basically of paying them, handing the keys back, or doing a CVA, which is basically kind of liquidating the company and putting a new trading company in place. They're the only three options, really. You know, you could put a payment plan in place, but then that's going to put so much debt on the business. Is that really worth doing it? But yeah, I think we're already seeing it of, you know, high streets in London, places that I know, places that I used to go to, of just basically shutting up shop, really. And then the landlord's not getting any money because the tenants left.
Yeah.
And then, you know, someone wants to come and take over the property, the rent will be cheaper than what was previously agreed, and they'll have to give a rent-free period as well. So what the landlord's doing doesn't make any sense anyway, and feels very counterintuitive to what they should be doing. But yeah, I think we'd be looking at a fundamentally different London to what, well, any inner city really, any part of the country, to what we were looking at or what we knew in February last year.
Yeah. I think what's been great to see going around is, you know, there are petitions for hospitality businesses to sign these petitions to ensure there's a chancellor that represents hospitality in Parliament, who is a bit more attuned to, you know, what hospitality and, you know, brings to the table. It counts for a huge amount of our economy, for people, you know, well-being, for socializing, sense of community, and also for our nation's heritage. I think having someone in Parliament that really can stand up for us would be a big help. It also would just speed things up, like, yes, maybe ensuring this tenant landlord relationship is mandated, also, you know, fighting and pushing for the business rates to be you know, because all these things, if they aren't addressed, paying that amount of money come April onwards, and, you know, the furlough, the grants, none of that really, you know, touches it doesn't touch the sides now, and it's not going to see us through that period anyway. So I think, you know, it's having this, the government needs to have a bit more foresight, and they're not doing that for us, I think. Because everything's a firefighting sort of solution, but it's not really a solution, because we go through another lockdown and then we go through another round of, you know, issues. But what we need is for the long term solutions for the long term, and so we can plan and get back to business. Because I think that's what.
And I think you raise a great point there, Tasha. A really, really, really good point. That is something we need to get on. Really, is, you know, we will get through this. The industry will get through this period of time in one way, shape, or form. It will get through it. And there's one of my favorite things about hospitality are the people in hospitality. I know some of the most creative, innovative, brave, hardworking, motivated, you know, caring, thoughtful people I've ever met in any other industry in hospitality. So we can get through this. It will be in a different way, shape, or form, but we can get through this. But what we need to then work on going forward, to go to your point, Tasha, is how do we as a industry get the government to realise, and the nation as a whole, that hospitality is a net benefit to the UK economy, being one, culturally being another. You know, all I ever hear from, you know, spending 20 years in hospitality, all it is, you know, it's fucking donkey for governments to kick. You know, whether it be, you know, people going out and getting drunk on a Friday, Saturday nights, you know, people going to A&E, all of these things. But we need to change that conversation to all the positives that it gives it. You know, the amount of tourists that come to London, to the UK, to Michelin star restaurants, go to cocktail bars, come and drink beer with us. You know, we've had people from all over the world that have come to Mother Kelly's just to have a beer. You know, we need to focus on these things. The fact that we are sitting here, Gabs, you know, you've worked for us, Tasha, you currently work for us, you know, and you've gone on to do some really great things, Tasha, Gabs, before and after you've worked for us. That's a positive thing. And the people that, everyone that's worked for us, you know, and I can think of people that have started businesses on the back of coming to work for Mother Kelly's. and go on expanding the industry as a whole, how do we get the government and the people that don't work in hospitality behind hospitality and look at it as being a net positive for the country? I really, once we get through that, I think that's going to be, or should be, the goal for the industry as a whole. Not for it to be kicked on, not for it to just be a money bank for the government by putting duty up more or business rates more or the late night levy in, or the annual license tax, all of these things. How do we get it to be representative of all of the positive things that hospitality is, and all the reasons why we're still working in hospitality and the reasons why I love it? How do we get everyone that doesn't work in hospitality to look at that and not just these perceived negatives? I think is the next challenge that we'll face.
There is a complex, and I call it the bartender complex. The people that are working in the hospitality industry aren't, comfortable enough to believe that that's the right path for their future, for their life. And there is always this sensation about, where am I going to find a real job in life? What am I going to do with my life? And I'm always trying to explain to the people, do you love what you're doing? Do you like it? Are you feeling great when you're waking up and you go to work? Wherever work you do, that's your career. You need to keep it. You need to thrive in it, and need to make sure that every single day you're getting celebrated for what you do. And the public watching when they go around and when they consume in the best bars in this city or the worst bars in this city, but hopefully in the best. And when they're going around, they see that there are some real good individuals out there, consuming the beer and going out. If I'm receiving a beer on my table from someone which is a real, skillful bartender or a waiter, you have to tip, you have to support, you need to understand all the difficulties related to it, and also give us something out from the kindness that the person had on serving you and giving you the best of service. That's the stories that we want to share.
I agree 100%. I feel very lucky. I've been working in hospitality for 20 years, and I used to work in a cocktail bar in Nottingham back in the day, and I just loved making drinks. I couldn't think of a better way for me to spend time was to be bartending and making daiquiris and sazeracs and old fashions and just chatting to people over the bar. It was like literally I couldn't think of a better way to spend time, and I still feel very much like that right now. I spend way too much time in front of my laptop now than I'd like to, as opposed to actually working behind the bar. But how do we get people? It's a great question, and it's a question that I probably spend way too much time thinking about, because I feel very lucky in my career, and I've been at 20 years. It is a career now, and I've worked from being a bartender on minimum wage. I remember moving to London for the second time, or permanently moving to London. I was working a cocktail bar in the West End. I got 3 shifts a week. That's all I got. I was on minimum wage, and I remember how much money it cost me to live in London because I wasn't earning enough money through that. But I loved it. So I was just like, right, I'm going to carry on, going to work through this. And I did, and here we are all these years later, owning the business which I own. And so I feel very lucky that I've always dedicated to a career in hospitality, and I couldn't never really think of doing anything else outside of it. But I think back to your question is, how do we get people to recognise that it is a valid career? I think it's such an important question, really, because I would love to be telling people about how to go around owning a business, getting a business, the legalities of it, the ins and outs of it. I'd love to tell people about that, but it's very rare I get anyone coming to ask me any questions about it anymore. And I think it's such a good question, Gabs, and I feel very lucky that, through my 20 years, I've really seen an ebb and flow of it, where sometimes it is all just like, it's something I do until I do something else. And I've seen real parts of over the years where it's like, no, I want to be a bartender. I want to work in hospitality. And there is an ebb and flow of it. So how do we get our heads around doing that? I think is such an important question. Such an important question. And I also think part of that is businesses. The one problem with hospitality businesses is that they're really expensive. From the rates, the rent, the GP we get on beer is a lot lower than spirits. till systems, all of these things. It all costs a lot of money to run. Right, so how do we start managing those businesses and looking savings on how are those costs of running a business so that we can actually go, right, let's pay the staff more money. How do we do that? How do we get to that point? Is it through savings? Is it through charging more money? That's fine. How do we explain to the customer that actually your pint of pale ale is no longer £5 a pint, it's £6 a pint because of this?
Yep.
And how do we get them to care about that so they don't go somewhere else where it's £5 a pint? So some really big challenges there. Really, it's something I very often think about within my business. How do we enable that to happen? It's just very, very difficult. It's not like a decision you can make, then it happens. There's a lot of things you need to put in place before you can enable that to happen. But I think that's a really important question, Gabs, that I don't think we should, through all of this and what's going on, we can and we shouldn't forget that question, of how do we get people involved in hospitality? It's great and for a career, but also to make sure they can afford to do it. And they're not like, oh, fuck, I'm not sure how I'm going to pay my rent. Like I was when I moved in to London all those years ago. I think it took me 3 years to pay off the debt I was in from just living in London for not having enough shifts.
Yeah.
And how do we get around that problem? I think it's a great question. Really, really important question.
I remember Tasha enthusiasm when I explained to her what was going to be the project of Turning the Tide, and I basically explained her that we just wanted to show the real face of the hospitality, and like without too much lights and shiny fairy lights and colors. It just the crude, the raw, the real everyday life existence in these days. And do you remember when I told you about the project, Tasha?
Yeah, you did. And it's I think what's interesting is like what Nigel's also mentioned. It's it's champion hospitality jobs as a profession, as a real profession. I'm very invested in everything that's going on with Turning the Tide, but also like I was a biochemist. My first job was as a neuroscientist. I did this really quite abrupt switch, worked my way up through bar work, and even this pandemic has been really it's been a challenge. The work we do and the work I do, some days it's really, really mentally and emotionally draining, but I've never felt so fulfilled in for my work for hospitality. And I I wouldn't dream of being in another profession, and this is my career. And I think having these digital streams and having these conversations, I know we've done Nigel's had a great chat with Robbie from Orbit over Christmas on a live stream, talking similarly about what what the brewery was experiencing through the pandemic. I think sharing these really raw, genuine sort of experiences, and also being heartfelt conversations. The best bartender is someone that you'll buy a beer from and you'll have a heartfelt conversation with if you want, and I think reminding people of that happening, even though the pubs for community, all these pubs that we used to go to and socialize, I think people do miss that. So we need to keep that flame alive, keep reconnecting, share our stories, and when the time's right, we'll welcome people back. And the thing is, every member of hospitality will not bat an eyelid at doing that to like 200%, and I think that's the end goal, is to get to that stage.
And I think you've it's a really good point there. You mentioned as well, Gab, thinking about it, is who is the face of hospitality in the UK? It's fucking Tim Martin, really. And do we want him to be the face of hospitality in the UK? No, we don't. It's hospitality is a diverse. It's an amazing industry. And that's what we need the face of hospitality to be. And it's dynamic and it's youthful, and it can be playful and forward thinking. That's what we need the face of hospitality to be, is not Tim Martin. For good or bad, depending on what your opinion is, he shouldn't be the face of hospitality. you know, and we do need, and as you said, we need genuine people who are generally interested and have a real insight of what's going on to be the face of hospitality, which going back to some positives that's come over the last 9 months, I think we've got that, you know, we've got some more, you know, faces that are going out there that are being, you know, vocal and that face of hospitality. So that's definitely a positive thing that's happened.
And honestly, I won't stop until I'm sure then every pub around where I live, it won't turn into an empty space or a Wetherspoon, because if that day is ever happen, there's going to be a lot of people moving out from a city like London. The reason because we're here is because we want to enjoy the beautiful scene of art, hospitality, and all of these beautiful things that we are missing so much right now.
So it's another. Sorry, I'm gonna. You know, I feel really old saying all this, but I remember, you know, when I first got the Queen's Head, when we first opened the Queen's Head in King's Cross in, however, God knows how many years ago, 2008, 2009. That period of time just after the financial crash, I looked at it and I looked back at it, going it was really a golden era of hospitality in London through my time being here, and I do think going through this, I think can be another golden era in hospitality in the UK, because you'll have some young guys, young girls that have interesting ideas. But what's changed from February last year to whenever we reopen again this year is that property prices will be cheaper. So, and people will be more dynamic about what they want to do, and pop-ups will be back, and street food will be back, and all of these things will come back because people still want to do stuff and they still got the energy and the motivation to do stuff. So I do think, you know, those empty spaces that you say, that pub in the corner of wherever it might be closed, and the landlord might be like desperate to rent it out. So he might give it to someone who hasn't got any money, but is really keen to do it and is really motivated to do it. He might go, actually, do you know what? I'm going to give you a chance to do this. So, you know, we could have a whole nother business and all these other businesses coming through that, if that does happen. So I do think a lot of positives will come out of this regarding rent and hospitality and getting people, you know, in their early mid-20s, mid-30s into hospitality and into owning businesses within hospitality. So I think that's, again, that could be a positive thing that comes out of this, really. And I really hope it did, as it did in 2008, 2009. I know for a fact, if it wasn't for the financial crash, I wouldn't have been able to get the first pub that we got. Like, absolute fact. You know, the very first pub I got, the guy the couple, they basically just didn't want it. And they basically just give me the keys. They're like, you have it. I don't want it. I'm off. It's all yours. You worry about it. And, you know, that's 12 years ago, and that's how it all started. So there will be situations like that again, and there will be opportunities for people who don't have any money, but have a huge amount of enthusiasm, motivation to go and do something. So as bleak as these things are, and as difficult as it is right now, I have nothing, you know, well, it's not, I'm 100% sure come next year or in a year's time, sorry, at the end of this year or next year, we will be seeing interesting people doing interesting things in spaces that were probably uninteresting before. You know,
that is a beautiful thing that you said, because we're all concentrating about the negatives, but we really need a bit of this, you know, in a way.
100%. Look, what we're going through is shit. No one wants to go through it. It's awful. But
what you're saying, Nigel, is the epitome of like basically turning the tide, like, you know, coming through this. And yeah, you know, it's like we've said lots, you know, we'll get the pandemics, you know, there's a time limit on it. We don't know when that will be, but we just have to keep working towards those better days. And yeah, if we can get through the pandemic, what, like, you know, which we're trying so hard to do, whatever comes after is gonna, you know, the sky's the limit. We could, you know, do
and, you know,
great
during
things.
this whole period of time, there will be a couple at home that have really got into making pizza, and they love making pizza, and they got really good at making pizza, but they never thought they'd be able to open a pizzeria. But because of businesses going under and the fall of commercial rent, or the amount of places that people can do pop-ups in, they'll be able to do something. And there will be people like that all over the country that have ideas and think, "Ah, God, I can never do that." But because of the situation we're in right now, in 6, 8, 9, 12 months' time, it will give them the opportunity to do that. And I think that is really important. And 100%, I would bet the entire business on it, that we will see really positive things come out of a torrid time within the industry.
This is a very, very wishful, Nigel, which I'm not going to be able to go over this positivity and this is beautiful. And I wouldn't say that we may have to go to the end of the show if it wasn't for the fact that we promised we were going for 40, we say 50. I'm not feeling we can go until 60, despite the fact that I would love to. And I'm talking about minutes. And guys, is there anything else you would like to add on our chat so far? Because it's been super, super good to hear so much content in here, and so many, positivity and points of views. If you have anything else to add, please go for it. It's your time now.
I've got one quick thing to add. In the chat, Matt Black has just said that Mother Kelly's opened April 2014. So thank you for that, Matt.
I miss Matt.
My own business opened. So yeah.
I want to see Matt after a long time, actually.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So yeah, I look forward to seeing him as well.
I just want to say thanks. It's I obviously see Nigel at least once a week, or we chat quite often. I chat to you, Gabs, quite often, but it's nice to be in a room together, talking about lots that we're passionate about. I guess I should do some of the social media things. So follow What's in the Glass, which is at WITG UK on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Mother Kelly's on at mother_Kellys on Twitter and Instagram, and their separate pages for the different sites. We've also got the Queen's Head and Simon the Tanner. And yeah, I think maybe it's been really nice to be part of this. And maybe Gabs, if you wanted to do a shout out about the campaign, I'll leave that to you.
Just in case, guys, you're really interested to see the concretization of some of the points that we have discussed in here tonight, please have a look at what are we doing with Turning the Tide. The only way to make it happen is if we manage to go through the crowdfunding campaign. I know there are a lot of crowdfunding campaign out there, projects and everything, but it's a collective work of around 8-9 people at the moment. And it's been self-funded so far, and we are going into a lot of interest from people that normally are not interested in what we're doing as an industry. So it will be very interesting. It will be very nice. It will be very good if you would like to put an eye on the crowdfunding campaign. You can see the link passing just below at the end of the screen. And one of the most important things is you can support pubs through some of the rewards that myself and Tasha put on it. Especially there are the £200 option, which is going to give £150 of tabs that you can pay in advance to independent pubs around London, which I think in these days is always a good thing to think about, supporting your local, supporting the pubs that you are caring of. And very soon there's going to be new t-shirts about the project, so you're going to see it very soon. They're going to look good. And yeah, guys, Nigel, Tasha, thank you very much for sharing some time with me tonight.
Anytime, Gabs, anytime.
And thanks for everyone that watched. We have few comments. We had viewers and people that put likes. So this has been super, super, super nice. And you probably don't know that now we're going to stay on Zoom drinking beer probably until midnight, right?
That was always a plan, wasn't it?
Well, thank you very much again. And stay safe. Look after yourself, guys. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Tasha.
No,
Bye-bye.